Yeah, so we're talking about React Router. Yeah, React Router is not, it's its own project. It's not with React. I really don't know why the two just aren't together, because if you're building a React app, you're probably going to be using, if you're building a React app that has any sort of, complexity, you're going to be using React Router, most likely. I mean, so yeah, Apple uses it, Netflix, Microsoft, Airbnb. So essentially, yeah, if you're using React, you're probably using React Router. And as you go through React Router, we'll do a little tutorial, but when you have questions about React, you shouldn't go back to the tutorial. You should go to their documentation, because React Router there's a lot you can do with it. So you get something like let's look at lazy loading. Like lazy loading, this, because you might have a huge app and you might want not to load it all at once. Lazy loading allows you to load certain parts of your app. But, we're not going to talk about that ever, probably, because we're not going to have apps big enough where it's really worth it to set this up. But if you ever do, you come to there, they have, an example there. This is nice too, because they have like examples, like working examples, where you go to this Stack Blitz site and it gives you like the code and, kind of showing you how it looks and how it works. So you get the code and then you get this little demo, and then you can like come in here and change stuff. And it'll like, update it and run it. So, but let's just get started with like a basic example.
James, is there anywhere where it shows the steps of how to build them out? Not necessarily all the code exactly, but just like this step leads you to this step. Is there anywhere where that's kind of written out?
They don't, I mean, they have React Router does have a tutorial, like one tutorial, but this is kind of like, hey, here's how you set up a basic React Router app. And what we're going to do today is going to be very close to this example. But yeah, once you get into some of the more, this more kind of custom stuff, they're not going to like lay out like, here's exactly how you do it. They're going to give you an example and then kind of have you kind of figure it out. But they do give a basic tutorial inside of here that, if we look at, and this could be something you could go through like over the weekend or on your own time, because this actually is a little more in depth than what I want to do today. But, the demo they have, what the hell? It's not even, oh, I think that's the starting point. Okay. Is that the starting point? Do they have like the ending one? Oh yeah, completed version here. So they give you like a starting version. And this is what, like, if you go through that tutorial, this is what you end up building. And then you can like search. So this is what React Router is it's going to allow us to do stuff like this. But, we're not going to, what we're going to do today, we're not going to build out this like search thing. And so the tutorials are very limited, just like my tutorial on React Router is going to be limited. It's not going to be what you need. It might be what you need for the homework, but when you go out and like are starting to work on it like a project, you're not going to want to go back to like my lecture on React Router. You're going to need to go see the requirements for your project and then go to React, like either go to like Google or to the React router website to see how to do it. Because React router is a more, it does a lot. So, you know, to really go through all of what React router does, that would be like a couple weeks. We can get by with what we're doing for this class. We can get by with, you know, a day, and we'll get a lot, you know, just in an hour. I know, like, I don't know how to do lazy loading or modals or these, but what I do know how to do is come in and look at this and see how to do them. Like, I don't remember how to do this stuff. I've done lazy loading, I've done this stuff, but like, I don't know how to. Definitely, like, I would definitely 100% need to come back to the docs. And they actually, React router just came out with a new version like a month ago. So it's actually, we're going to be using version 6. They switched from version 5. They actually made some pretty big changes. So like they changed how they did stuff. So I was very familiar with version 5. Now they're using version 6. It's more or less the same, but there are some differences. So it's like definitely now I need to go back, because now I'm like thinking, oh, that's version 5. I got to see how it works in version 6. So don't, like, the point here is like, don't beat yourself up if you have to come back and like look at their, you know, reference. That's what the docs are here for. I mean, unless you want to try to like remember all of this stuff and what it's all doing. So as we're going through lecture, you're going to see me like coming back through this reference. But I would say this tutorial, we're kind of going to follow a little bit. So I think this could be something you could use as a reference, you know, when you're for like the basic setup. And like I said, this one's even a little more in depth than what we're going to do. But let's go ahead and get started with this. So let's go ahead and, who was it? Someone was asking me for just like some kind of general steps, like just to outline some steps. So that's what we're also going to do as well. We're going to do that in the README. Just what's kind of like a basic flow of, you know, what maybe I would do when I'm setting up a project.
That was me.
Cool. So we'll do that as well. We'll kind of document this as we're going through. And I think documenting your code is something you should also practice doing. Number one, it's a good way to kind of, it's like the rubber ducky method, where if you're documenting your code, it's kind of, you're explaining to yourself what you're doing. So it's kind of like teaching someone or teaching yourself, or trying to put into words what you're doing. And then also you can use it as a reference later. And then third, once you get to a company, you know, you saw that big complex code base. Well, you probably want to be documenting some of the things you're doing. That last company was like, it was horribly documented. So when I went in and like was trying to like figure out how stuff worked, I was just stuck with either waiting for like a senior dev to help me, or just looking through the code, like using the code as documentation. There was some stuff, it was like you couldn't Google it, you had to just look at the code. But anyway, let's go ahead and do a create React app. Oh, sorry, create space React app. And I'm going to call this, I'm just going to call this user CRUD refactor, and it with Spring 22. You might want to throw in like React router, or, you know, that's just what I'm going to call this. Split open a new pane. So while that's building, I can CD into that. Did I call it? I already forgot. You don't need to do this, but I'm going to build a repo in GitHub so I can push this up. Sorry.
Is there any way to rename something once you named it? Or would you just delete it and make another one?
On GitHub?
No, more so just locally.
Yeah, you can. I'll show you that in 1 second. Just get this. Okay, so I have my remote. Just gonna do a little quick add and a git commit. Okay, so all right, renaming stuff. Well, can I just go into the week 2 folder and like, where is it? DPL demo, week 2, and double click rename. Is that what you're talking about?
I guess if it's that easy, I was just wondering if there was something through terminal that you would have to do.
Yeah, through terminal.
But if you don't have to do it through there, then yeah, I would just do it the other way.
Well, terminal. So let's what if you can't do that? What if you can't do that through the UI? Sometimes sometimes this is probably, I can't remember the last time I did this other than college. You actually, I was writing code where you would remote into another computer. So you would SSH into another computer and you could like access that computer's directories and you could, change stuff. But you weren't on that computer, so you didn't have the possibility of like going into their desktop and, renaming it. So you couldn't physically do that. You couldn't open up VS Code. You had to just do everything through the terminal. So if you wanted to rename something, there's 2 commands. I could do a copy. Let's do an MV first. I could move. So MV stands for move. I give it the name of the file. And then I tell it the new name of the file. And now that file is named Yo.
I got
Okay.
an error when I tried doing the create yarn.
Okay. I'm sure something's probably just misspelled or a syntax error. Let me just throw this out in Slack. Because this one shouldn't fail. Like if you've successfully done this in the past, it probably shouldn't fail again, unless you type something wrong.
Okay.
So that's how I can move something. I could also copy something. I could do a CP.
Yeah, and then just delete the old one.
Yeah, but
Okay.
if I wanted to move it, then I would use move. Oh, so to copy, I do a -R because it's a folder. So the -R stands for recursive. Oh my God, it's going to take forever because there's another modules folder in there. Okay. So now that's copied. Now I have those 2.
Mhm.
So I can move Yo back. I don't want to have it called Yo. I'm going to move it back to this. Yeah.
You rename or move something while all the subsequent files within that know or get updated to the new name, or they still for that.
They
file?
don't, their names don't change. They live in this. It's the only thing that changes is the folder name. It's the same thing as me coming in here and like renaming this folder, or coming in here and saying duplicate. But, sometimes we want to do this with the terminal. It's just getting more comfortable with these terminal commands. It's not like, I think I definitely was like this when I started using terminal commands. I was like, oh, what kind of voodoo is this? Like, what's going on? A lot of the stuff is just like, it's just as simple as like doing stuff like rename, duplicate, new folder, new file. We're just doing it through the terminal. But I remember I was always like mystified by the terminal when I started learning it. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. And open this up in code is what I was trying to say. I want to do this one. Here it is. So I'm going to start doing some stuff with the README just so this will be, this will also show up on GitHub. That's the nice thing about the README. This is what you see on GitHub, but like, let's do like basic setup. And then we'll also kind of see some, markdown. If you ever don't memorize markdown, I think if you start using it, you will slowly start to memorize it. But let me just show you, just if you're wanting to write markdown, just go to like a cheat sheet. Because if you want to see how to do stuff on GitHub or with markdown, there's really not that much. So, I mean, we can do headings, we can bold text, italicize, block quote, ordered list, a link, an image. I mean, if you ever want to make a table, I think what's really useful, especially with documentation, is the code blocks. So we can do 3 backticks. We can even give it a language. So like, there's like essentially the list of things you can do with markdown. It's pretty simple, but we can write some decent documentation with it. So what I would do is, as we're going through this, and I recommend you do this, you write your own little markdown files, like getting started, and then you have a place on GitHub where you can go through and like, document stuff as you're going through it. So I could even, come and as detailed as you want to be. Now I might want to be a little more generic and say like, project name. And then CD into project name. So yeah, what I would recommend is first you set up React project. Like when you're getting started, you set up your React project. And also a GitHub account, a GitHub too. Set up React project in GitHub. And you can come in here and do like, git, I'll just say, git remote add origin SSH link. Add dot commit -m init and git push. And now I can, if I come over to VS Code and I do a right click and I say open preview, I can now see what that's going to look like on GitHub. So I can kind of, as I'm editing this, I can kind of like, look and see how it's actually going to look. You can add like any notes you want to add about this step. You can do that. Cool.
Where did you go for the preview?
I did a right click on the README and did a open
Oh,
preview.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So this is like the first thing I would do. I just set up my React project. And you can add any notes. So if any of these steps you want more clarification, you can either add it there. You could do like a little comment. Just so you can, know what you want to do. Cool. So we've done these steps. I've pushed, right? I don't think I have. Let's try git push origin master. This way you're just going to have GitHub set up. You're going to have that all working. And then I like to do like just a yarn start, like, just make sure it's working. You got to get it up and running anyway. So might as well just get these steps out of the way. Cool. So that's that step. Now, this is where it kind of gets a little hard to say, like, well, what are the steps? Well, it's like, well, what are we doing? Today, I think a next kind of generic step that you might want to do is add any third-party libraries you are going to be using. Okay. These will change, but some common ones will be, like Axios and React Router. That's just my little note. So I'm not going to, obviously I can't show with this basic, like these steps, like what libraries you're going to be adding, but I can kind of give an example. So we're going to be doing yarn add Axios and yarn add, and see, once again, going to the documentation because it's changed, React Router. Installation, I forget what it's called. It has, I think it's React Router at version 6. React Router DOM.
What are the backticks doing? There's like a little block that it's making.
Yeah, it's so in my preview, it's making it,
Yeah.
it's formatting it like that. And I can actually, we'll see this, I can do backticks and do like, say JavaScript. And then it'll like recognize this as like JavaScript. So you can actually like do little sections of code. So the backticks are very useful for, the writing out code. Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. So yarn add Axios. Yarn add React Router DOM. I think it was at 6.
Why after I did my yarn start, do I not have the GitHub refactor popping up anymore? How do I get that to pop up again?
Well, remember, if you have your yarn start running, you're going to need, like, if I want to be doing this while my server's running,
You have to open up another one.
yeah, or you need to stop your server.
What command is that?
Control C to stop your server, or Command D to split your pane. Or you can just right click and split pane vertically or horizontally.
You said it's Command D to split it,
Yeah.
and then you did a yarn.
All right.
And then you also did the yarn add React Router DOM 6.
Select these out.
The file it saves it into again, James?
What file?
Yeah, with the
To save what?
in the VS Code, those new libraries you're bringing into, what file is it again that all goes into?
Oh, well, so when I do a yarn add, it's automatically going to throw like the library. So I added, Axios and React Router DOM. So it automatically throws that into the package JSON, just saying, hey, these are what packages you have. And then it automatically adds the code in the node modules. So I don't change any of that. That's automatically done when I do the yarn add. Let's see here, yeah. These things have been changed. Those are the two that were added. And just notice, just to get a little more like, so notice how your node modules is grayed out. If I go to my git ignore, we're actually ignoring this file. GitHub is ignoring, or I shouldn't say GitHub. Git is ignoring the node modules file folder. So we don't push this up to GitHub because it's a huge folder. What we do is we push up the package JSON, and that tells us what packages we need to download. So that's why when we clone something, we run that yarn command.
So as long as it's listed in that file, when you clone something, your device will know that it needs those libraries too.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the React router is supposed to automatically happen in the package JSON when you do the yarn.
Yeah. You should have React.
Because I don't see mine. I just have, it just says React, React DOM, React scripts, but I don't.
Okay. You did not run yarn add. You did not run this command. And I'll throw this yarn add React router DOM at 6.
Oh, okay.
So that's the command that you run.
Okay.
So yeah, I think for now these are the two we'll be using the most. We'll definitely use others. There's like, you want to do like a chart library, you can add like charting libraries. There's so many libraries out there, calendars, charts, component libraries. But this will just kind of be our start. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and this is where it kind of gets hard. Like, so what will you initially do? Like, what's the steps? So this is going to focus on, React router, the context, React context, I should say, and also actions. So this README is really kind of set up on these 3 things. So let's do a little like, let's first start with React router, or basic React router setup. I mean, this is kind of like silly to throw this in here again, but I'm just going to make the note, make sure React router is installed. Just in case if you wanted to like copy this little section. I need to do this as a backtick. That's not really looking good. Like that. Okay. Make sure React router DOM is installed. Okay, cool. So let's now let's actually start writing some code to get into this. And then what I recommend you start doing is, as you're writing your code and as you get it working, maybe throw some of those steps that are like kind of like aha moments, or like, oh wait, this is what I need to do, into a README. Because documenting code, it's like, if you're able to explain this stuff to yourself or explain it to someone else, it really like solidifies your understanding. So let's just build this out together, this little brief tutorial of.
Where do I look to see the, like, if I have the React router and the Axios? Well, because I'm pretty sure I did Axios, but then I don't remember if I actually did the Axios.
In the package JSON, you should see Axios and React Router DOM.
Where's Axios?
And we'll find out pretty quickly when you try to use it, whether or not it's installed.
Okay.
When I add a library, I don't ever like check. I'm showing you. I don't go like look at my package JSON and make sure it installed. Like, I'm pretty confident it did. This is more like, this is how you can really see what's installed in your code. And then, yeah, if I want to make sure they're all installed, I do a yarn. That goes through my package JSON, and it's going to say, hey, these are already up to date. So cool. Good to go. So let's do this. Let's go ahead. So for React Router, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our index.js, because we want this React Router DOM to kind of wrap our whole component. And this is just from, I would look at the documentation, but this is kind of how they want us to set it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import this thing called browser router. If I can spell it, from React Router DOM, and I'll use the autocomplete to grab that. And I'm just going to wrap my whole app. I can just get rid of this strict mode. And I'm going to just do that.
What did you do after React Router DOM?
What do you mean?
What were you saying? You said, did you just delete something after React Router DOM? I was typing that in. I didn't see what you did.
Yeah, I just got rid of that strict mode thing.
What is? All right.
So this is kind of what I changed. So I could go into my README. Maybe make a note, update index.js. You don't have to follow this README. I will push this up. This is going to like show up. So if you just want to follow this, like just kind of watch. What I could do is I could just say, hey, update index.js. And now I'm going to use the JavaScript, because now I'm writing, this is JavaScript code. I can just copy and paste that code in here. And so now I'm creating these steps for myself. Hey, make sure React Router DOM is installed. Okay, cool. Update index.js. Or maybe I can be a little more clear and say like, in my README, I could say like, set up, browser router index.js. Now I'm building out this like nice little step-by-step. I think it's going to be a little more concise than like the tutorial on React Router, even though that's, a very useful tutorial. I can just kind of pick out the bare bones that I need. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is so React Router is, it's meant to have multiple components. So multiple pages. So what I'm going to say we want to do next, and this is what we'll do, like, create your pages, some components. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're doing our user CRUD, right? So I'm going to do a couple, let's just come in here and create a couple components. Let's say like I have a users page. So I'm just going to come in and create like a users.js. And I'm going to just keep this very simple. And then H1 users page. And export default users. And I could come in here, just do another page just for demo. Let's just do like an about. Websites usually have like an about page. So we'll do an about.js. Cool. So I can just more or less copy this. Something else we're going to do today. We're going to want to make just for demo, we're going to want to make an individual user page. So I'm going to call this user.js. Once again, just copy and paste some of that stuff in there. Let's actually do this. Let's kind of maybe create some folder organizations. So let's come in here, and we don't have to do this, but let's just, these are going to be our pages. So I'm going to make a pages folder. I'm going to throw my about in there. I'm going to throw this in here. If I'm in terminal, so I can do this with VS Code. How do I move a file in the terminal? Well, what I can do is I can use the move command. So move, so I find the file. So let's say I want to move users. So it's source user. And I want to move this into source. And I'm just going to give it the relative path. And this one, I need to say user.js. User.js. And see, that just moves that. I could drag and drop, or I could use terminal. So move, hey, take this file that's in, because right now I'm in the, if I do a PWD, I'm in this folder. I'm in my users CRUD React Spring 22 folder. So then I just got to give it the path of the thing I want to move, the relative path, and then the new path I want it to go to.
Terminal is just so much cooler.
It's so much. Yeah, it's definitely my last computer, like my file system was kind of, it was like hard to like move files because I don't know what happened, but so it like really forced me to like, there was times where I was like, oh man, I have to like copy all my files to this thing, and like, I got a lot better. So if you find yourself like coming in here, right clicking, new folder, new file, be like, oh, let's do this. Let's see if I can do this in terminal. That's how you're going to get more comfortable with the terminal, is just by making yourself use it. Cool. So for my demo, maybe I'm just for my README. I don't know if I really want to like throw this in here, but I could just say like JavaScript. I'm just gonna like throw these all in here. Just as reference. And then, like I said, for this README, don't worry about following it because I will definitely, this will be up on GitHub. But cool. So now I can kind of like look at my code. There's some components, sweet. So now let's go see how we actually, oh wait, we're gonna want one more thing. Probably gonna want like a, well, let's go into our app.js and do it here. So let's go into our app.js. I'm just gonna delete this all. So we div. All right, so I'm gonna show this main header. I don't know. Maybe do something like this, like users app. Kind of show what is going on here. Then I can do like a little makeshift. Actually, let's do this in another. Actually, no, I think this will be cleaner here. I would probably put my navbar in another file, but let's just keep this all. I think it's for like the tutorial purpose. It might be a little cleaner right here. So I'm just going to do some inline styling. Let's just do I don't know. Let's do maybe display flex. And let's give it a border just so we can see it. Solid, right? What does I need to close my navbar? Yeah. So what I can do in here, I'm going to pull out some link elements. Now I'm going to import these from React Router DOM. And I give, sorry, I give these a path. Okay. So let's do like a 2/ that maybe goes to like our users. And then I'm going to do a 2. Actually, let's do users. Let's just put in users here. I'm actually not going to do this show yet. And then we're just going to do the link to / about. Can a lazy way just to like do a little this is just like a UI thing. It's like just have a little pipe and then a space so the two links aren't nested up against each other. Now this I should be able to see.
What was that you just did?
What
Is that right there?
that's just a string. That's a pipe, and then I'm trying to get a little space right there. Maybe it's because I have this display flex. Yeah, there we go. I just want a little space between these two with the pipe. Just that. It's just a dirty way to, create a better UI. So now we can see I have my users app, I have users about. If I click on users, notice that the URL changes. I have like /users. If I go to about, it takes me to /about.
I'm getting an error on my, it says on my app.js.
What's the error?
It's saying line 13 and line 14, the link is not defined. So it's, and then on line 9 in my index.js, it says React router is not defined.
React Router DOM. So you are, so yeah, so it's first saying that you don't have the link. So let's look at this one together, because I think this is a good one to understand what's going on.
You want me to share my screen?
Yeah.
All right.
Just since we're kind of new with working with third-party libraries, I think this is an error you're probably going to see many times. So let's try to understand it.
So this is what I'm getting.
Okay, cool. Link is not defined. Sweet. React router is not defined. So, okay, your index.js, we have two different errors. So let's go to your index.js first. Yeah, so line 9, React router is not defined. Do you see React router defined anywhere in this?
No, so I'd have to import React router.
No, you have to use it's browser router. Yeah. Cool. Now you should be able to go look, that one's gone. Cool. So now link's not defined. So let's look at that one. So yeah, you have this link component. Is it where do you understand what it's saying? Is it defined? Do you see it defined anywhere? You're using it. This is like it's kind of like if you're calling a function, but you're not defining it. You wouldn't expect a function to work if you never defined it, right?
So why does yours going through? You did one step that I missed.
Yeah, you need to import this. You can't just magically use this link component. You need to say, hey, like you did with browser router, you need to import that.
At the top?
Yeah.
I feel like that might have auto imported because I don't remember typing that.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Like I use that tab. When you do that tab complete, it auto imports it. So yeah, let's do that. Okay, cool. And notice how it put the square brackets around it. So that's important too. If you don't have the curly brackets around link, if you don't have that, it's not going to work. Cool.
Now, why does mine not pop up like how yours was?
Refresh your page.
Yeah, that's most likely.
You might be getting an error in your console.
Yeah, you should always have if you ever run into an issue where it's just blank, you always need to open up your console.
On this?
Yeah. Because you don't always get the error on your browser. Sometimes you need to look at this. Okay. So object are not valid as React child.
So it's something to do with this.
Well, let's look at it a little closer. Look at the error. Go back to the error. Are we getting a file? Scroll up. The above occurred in the nav component. Yeah, scroll up again. Yeah, I think it's in your nav component. Oh yeah.
You didn't put your styles inside the nav tag.
Yep, there it is.
You see that, Randy?
So on this line?
Yeah, copy all that and
It
cut
looks
it
like he
out.
wrapped his links too.
And then inside the opening nav tag, you want to paste it in there. There you go.
and then slash to close it.
He's got the,
Oh wait, yeah, he's already got the close.
you're good. That's good. There you go. Cool.
Thank you.
Okay.
James, I also have an error, but it says the document dot get element by ID on the index page.
Okay. Yeah, let's look at that one too, because that's a little nasty syntax errors. I'm pretty sure I know what this one is.
So there's gonna be a lot of times where your error won't pop up and you have to go in the console.
Yes.
All right.
You should always have your console open when you're developing.
All right.
It's just a good habit to have. Okay, so yeah, you're getting a little red squiggly line right here. Let's maybe see. Did you ever do a get add get dot? Did you commit?
I don't remember.
Okay, so go to your GitHub, that little sorry, on the left of VS Code, the little branch icon. Like where it has an 8, has a blue 8. In VS Code, it's on the very left, that blue 8. Click on that icon. Now click on your index.js.
Right here
No, in
or over here.
yeah. Okay, so this is showing, this is another way GitHub, I mean, not GitHub, Git can be a very useful tool because you can go through and you can see what you changed. Now, sometimes because you might be like, that you're getting a warning that, or it's breaking, but it's telling you where it's breaking it. And because you just made a change. And now you can look at the difference between these two files and say, hey, what is different about these two? It's like one of those like game, like when you look at two
Yes.
pictures. I mean, yeah, that's different, but is that breaking it?
No.
Not. Can anyone see a small difference? It's one thing. It's one.
The tags are different.
The tags are different. It's you switch from React strict mode to browser router. I'll tell you, it's not that.
Oh,
Which one is the changed site?
Well, look where like VS Code's also giving you a warning. It's like squiggly line document. What does the other one have that you don't have, like kind of in that area?
I'm missing a comma
It's a comma.
after your closing tag.
After this.
Cool. Now, you might have a different error, but that was that error. So, so that can be a way how, like, if you can, and I think this is like a good little side note on Git and committing often, and committing when stuff is working. Because when you commit when stuff is working, you can go back through your commit history and you can compare files. Be like, oh man, what is different about these two files? Because sometimes you can like run into a bug, you know where it's at, but you don't really know what's causing it. And by comparing these two, you could say, oh, that one had a comma, that one didn't. There's been bugs I've found, and they're not like, they're less syntactic, but there have definitely been bugs that I have found by going through the Git history, like the commit history, and being like, well, it's working here, it's not working there. What's the difference? So let's look at this other error though.
So that works only if you do the git add dot and git commit.
Yeah, it's going to
Okay.
compare, you can compare your commits. And that's why when you're committing, it's a good idea. It's not like 100%, but you want to commit once you get stuff kind of working, or like, hey, this is a good point to like kind of save, because you can go back and then use that. Okay, so now you have this error. Once again, VS Code's kind of showing you a little hint. You need to wrap all that in a string.
The whole thing.
Yeah. Cool. There's some debugging. All right. Yeah, let me go ahead and share. Let me share my screen. I just want to get through this one little, we got just to do one more thing to actually render some pages, and then we'll take a break. And then we'll like have a lot of what, you know, React is, or React, sorry, I should say React Router does. And just with this basic demo, you're going to see, hey, oh man, this is pretty cool. We can do quite a bit with this. Okay, I'm sharing my screen, right? Can you see my VS Code, or do you see?
Yes, I got it.
Yeah.
I have VS Code.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do next, and I'm going to go to my index.js. Now what I can start doing here is I can start rendering out some components, or like, this is how I'm going to tell React Router, hey, these are how I want you to kind of match that link. So what I mean by that is I'm going to say, hey, route. I'm going to do a path to backslash. So that's like my root path. And I'm going to say, hey, I want this element to be my app component. I need to make sure I like that. Then, oh wait, it did import. It is there. Okay, cool. That was already there. And then actually I need to write this as this is a difference between React Router 6. Anyway, I'm going to say, hey, render that component. I don't need the parenthesis there. Now, actually, so what I also want to do is I'm going to close this route, because we're going to do our lovely favorite word. We're going to do some nesting. Okay. So here's my app component. And then inside of here, I can add some routes inside of here. So I'm going to do a path to /users. The element for that is going to be my users component. Now that one I auto imported. This one I can do a self-closing tag, but it's wrapped in my app route. And then I can come do another one for about. Okay, so I'm getting these errors. Route is not defined, about is not defined. So I forgot, I didn't auto import these. So I need to import route, and it doesn't look like I imported my about component. So if I'm getting those undefined errors, I need to make sure I'm importing all of these things I'm using. Can't resolve users. Oh, so I gave it a bad path. This is actually, I must have had this in there before, but this is pages/users. Give it the right relative path. If I do an inspect, nothing's rendering, probably getting an error. So a route is only ever used to be child's, like, yeah, okay. I spelled something wrong. So I called this route. It actually needs to be called, I need to wrap this all in like a routes component. So, and this is just, you know, this is just how React Router wants us to do this. I wrap all of my routes in this routes component, and then I have this main route component, which is going to render my app. And then inside of there, I render my users and about. Cool. So now I can see my nav bar again. I'm going to users and about. I still don't see those pages. I need to add one other thing to my app.js because let me just see if I can do it like this really quick. Let me just remove this nested route. You don't have to do this because I'm going to put it back. So I'm going to have path users and about. So notice how when I go to users page, that's there. I could also go to the about, like manually type that in. That's there. But now I lose that nav bar, my app page. So if I put that back and nest these routes inside of my app, because I really want this app to wrap all of my routes. Now that nav bar is there, because that's what I really want, that nav bar on all of my pages, but now it's not showing that page. I need to go back to my app.js and tell it where to render those components. And I do that by using this outlet component. And now this is where it's going to match the path and then render that nested component. So now I have that app page, I have my nav bar, and then I can click users and about. It's pretty useful, right? And that, in my mind, this is for what we're getting, like we're getting navigation now. We have a nav bar, we can go to different components. This setup was pretty straightforward, right?
Seems like it, yeah.
So what I could do is, I could just throw this little example in my README. Let's do for basic app.js setup demo.
So we have to add that outlet on the about too?
No, just the app.
Because I'm getting an error now on my about.js saying line 18 about is not defined.
Yeah, once again, you're not importing it. You need to make sure if you're using an about component, you need to be importing.
I have it imported in index.js, right?
You have to import it wherever you're using it. So if I'm using, the about component,
Yeah, I already have that.
make sure importing it. Let me finish and then we're going to take a break and then I can look at it. Because I want to push this little documentation up. So we have that. So this is what your app, it's really not even necessarily has to be your app, but we're seeing we can have some links to link to pages to change our URL. We're going to have this outlet component. What this outlet component does is it allows us to nest these routes inside of a higher one. And then when it matches the path, it will render the about will then get replaced with the outlet, or the users will then become the outlet. And we'll even see we can even do more nesting of routes. We'll maybe do a little demo of that. So I'll just copy this. Go back to my README. Oh, the script. So if I look at this README, and we're looking at basic React router setup. This is what we do. We add it, we add the package, set up our browser router, create some components. Here's kind of like a demo with how we set that up with our components. Obviously, if we have different pages, we'll add. I think we can kind of see what we need to change. We have the outlet component here. And then in our index.js, we can set up our routes. And then I can do a git add dot git commit -m. And now that should be up. So if I go to my GitHub, did I select out that repo? I don't think I did.
Oh, yeah, I don't think.
Let me select out this repo. See, now in my README, like I have this, like this code documentation, like setting it up. I have some of this stuff. So this can be nice with your homework. So if you ever want to go back and you want to like remember how you did something in your homework, if you spent some time, you know, writing the documentation, you know, and explaining it to yourself, I think this could definitely come in handy. So let me slack this out though. I don't need to wrap that thing. Cool. So let's take a break. Let's come back at 11:05. If there's any other questions, yeah, I can look at some setup stuff.
All right, I'm gonna share my screen.
Okay.
Saying line 9.
Yeah. So, okay. Where? Cool. So if you look at this, you're trying to export something called about. Where in this file is about defined?
In pages.
Where in this, you're trying to export this thing called about in this file. Where is, yeah, there's no reason to be looking at another file. Because
So what's it's saying line 9, so it's obviously something right here. I understand that.
yeah, about's not defined. Where that's what I'm at. Where do you define about here? If you said export default, you know, taco is, would you expect that to work?
No,
Yeah. What would you need to do for that to work?
you have to define. You have to define it.
Yeah. So do you see about defined anywhere in this file? Like go,
No.
just read it line, like line 1. Let's read it line by line.
So at the top, I put import about.
Why would you import how could you import about in your about page?
That's why I'm understanding why I'm not getting the error, because that's the only other solution that I think in my mind would fix this problem.
Yeah, you're having like a very fundamental misunderstanding of like what's going on here. So what does line 1 say?
It's a function.
What's the name of that function?
Users.
Yes.
Oh, so I'd
You
have
have
to
it.
about.
Yes. You need to define, like that's the define. You need to define it before. It's like if you call a function with, if you wanted to like, let me share my screen. Like what the error is, and because the undefined error is like very, very common. Like if I had like, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say like I have an add. I just want to call it, if I can, Jesus Christ. Sorry. Just doing autocomplete. Add 1 and 1. I tried to run this node demo.js. I get this error. Add is not defined. Right? I can't just say add, you know. Like JavaScript's going to be like, what the hell is that? I have
Yeah.
no, so I need to define it. It's Ruby, sorry. can save that. Adyo equals a function. There you go. Now I don't have the error because it's defined. Now this doesn't work, but I don't get that error because adyo is defined. So that's what the error was. And then if I wanted to export it, I could export default adyo.
Now you named it demo.js, so why are you exporting adyo instead of just exporting demo.js?
We don't export a file.
You just export what's in the file?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's with yours, you called it about.
So now on your users.js, you copied all this over. So then you change the constant from users to user. And then on users, you have the constant as users.
Yeah, because this is my about page, so I'm calling it about, just throwing it, about page, user.
User. And
I
then
mean,
user, user.
This would work. I could, in my user page, I could call this const user. But I'm just, making this make sense by, or having it just be named the same. I could call this X.
Okay. But you're just giving it a more relevant name.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But I want you more to focus on like the undefined error, what that really is.
Okay.
Does that, and like I did show it with like the add example. So when you ever see like that undefined error again, it's like, oh, I'm trying to use something that is not defined in this file. So I either need to define it in the file or I need to import it from another file.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it also might be because it also can be like, oh, maybe I misspelled something.
Okay. The only other questions I have, but I'm not gonna ask for it right now. I was trying to put a placeholder on my homework from last night, and I was trying to get the placeholder to placehold whatever their email and everything is, and then it ended up kind of not working. I was having Michael help me, but somehow now whenever I edit my files won't get submitted back down to the users part of it.
Okay, yeah, I would say that's look at that during project time.
Okay.
Because yeah, that's like we need to look at the code for that one.
All right, so just bring it up kind of after lunch.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good.
I'm having a situation too, if you don't mind. Otherwise, I'll just watch.
No, you're fine. Can share your screen.
Yeah. Here. It's just not coming up. And I did the same thing. I mean, I might have missed something.
Yeah, this was I kind of went through this because I got the same error and I fixed it, but I might have fixed it a little quick. So if you go to your index, so what it's saying is these route need to be wrapped inside of a routes. So these route components, it wants it eventually to be wrapped by routes. So if you go to your index.js,
Okay.
you need to wrap. So you have your browser router. You need to wrap all of those route components. And let me share my screen so you can see it.
Okay.
That'll be easier. Instead of me trying to say what you need to do, show you. So all of those route components, you need to wrap in this routes component.
Oh, I see. Okay, I missed that then.
And one other thing I saw with yours in your app.js, or you had imported a lowercase link. That's not gonna work. It needs to be uppercase. And then those ones down there need to be uppercase.
Uppercase.
Yeah.
Okay, those are kind of important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think with the React router, just once we get to this point, we get it set up. React router is going to make our life easier. I know it's a little, it's a new thing. So initially it's, it's definitely some complexity, but this does a nice thing where it allows us to start being able to take something complicated and, break it up into chunks. So React router, I think, is a good tool, that is kind of going to help us separate our app. And then once we start working in teams, it's like, hey, someone can work on the users page, someone can work on the about page. And really then, like, I'm working on the users page, I can just work on this file. Someone's working on the about page, they can just work on that file.
Hey, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the app.js file. What is what's the outlet tag doing? What is that? What
Yes.
purpose does that serve?
Yeah. Okay. So, because this is an important part. So when we look at our index.js, so notice how these are nested inside of this app component. So I have two components nested within this route, but that's the element app component. So which one do I render? Well, I'm going to render based on the path. So it's the path is going to, like, this route is going to match, hey, when this is users, render that users component, users. If it's about, go to about. But notice how my users app and that nav bar is staying there, but I'm able to switch between those two. So which one do I render? And more importantly, where do I render it? Well, when I look at my app.js, and then we could maybe do a little paragraph here to see it. Outlet component. How come I can't spell component? Component here. See, outlet component here. It's the about page. It's that component. Now it's the users page. So this outlet component is going to plop whichever thing is matching inside of here. So in my app.js, I can have, like, this header, I can have a nav bar that's shared across both of those pages, or it's just kind of
Oh, okay.
global. And then the outlet.
Universal on pages to be within that outlet tag.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed with mine, whenever I do click mine changes.
What changes?
So when I click users, then my nav bar goes away. All I see is users page, my H1. When I do about, it does the same thing.
Yeah, well, yours is probably not in this app.js.
That's in index or app?
This is in my index. So if these are not nested in that route component, if I go to users, that goes to users. If I go to /, there's my about page, but I don't see the outlet component. If I go to about, that takes me to about.
Oh, okay. I thought when you were clicking on your about that it kept your nav.
No, it should.
So where do you replace those?
Yeah, I think stop trying to code along. I think it's like, look at, just watch this, because this is the right now, these components are not nested. So I have my app whose path is /. I have a path whose / is user, and path it's about. And these are siblings. These three are now siblings of each other. So if I go to just / or, with no path, that takes me to my users app. And then the outlet component, I don't have anything there. If I go to users, if I click users, that goes to /users. I lose that app page. if I go to about, I also lose that about page because they're not nested inside of there. Now, maybe that's how I want this app to be. Maybe it's not. But if I put these inside of here, like I'm going to put my users inside of this app component. Now, when I go to users, it has the app. It's like nested inside of the app, but the about is not because it's not. So if I want it there, I throw it in there. So this is saying, hey, like render the app, and then where you see that outlet, render the outlet, users or about. And there you go. So it's more, it's like, this is like not how you, it's like, it comes down to is how do you want your app? This is why like kind of doing these step-by-step tutorials doesn't really work, because you might want these here for some reason. You might want them inside of here. You might want that there. I think for this one, we do want these wrapped inside of, we want everything wrapped inside our app one, because we want all of them to share this nav bar. So any route I add is going to be nested inside of this app component, or this route with the element of app. Cool. So we're going to do more nesting, because what we're going to talk about next is context. And this is a separate thing from React Router. So we're kind of throwing in 2 new concepts today. So I know that's a lot, but we have the weekend. And I kind of want ideas to kind of sink in. And so you'll have the weekend to kind of look at them. And ultimately, these are going to simplify things. I guarantee it. Context is very nice. It might take a second to wrap your head around it, but once you get it, it's a lot easier than passing props. So let's talk about context, because what context is going to allow us to do? It's going to allow us to share data throughout any component in our app. So we don't have to like yesterday when you're doing your CRUD actions, you had that user state, and you had to pass all these functions down through your users component to your user form to update that state. Context is going to give us a way to bypass that and just go from directly to like this context that we're going to create to our component. So let's do this. Let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder just so we can kind of see the different sections of our apps. Don't have to do this. I'm just trying to create some organization. So we have pages. So I know like my main React Router page is going here. And now I'm going to create something called a provider. So, and I'm just going to call this, let's just call this data provider. I might want to call this like users provider, but I'm just going to call this data provider for now, because we might add some other stuff to it. Cool. So there is that. So we're going to learn about a new concept, and this is the use create context. So I need to import React from React. And I'm going to do this. So I'm going to have a const, I'm going to call this data context. And this is, oh, this needs to be an uppercase R. This is going to be equal to React dot create context. So create context is a function we can call off of React. It's just kind of defined in React. So that's what I'm doing here. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is I'm I'm going to want to export this, but I'm going to also, so what we're doing here is like, I really want this to, create this state that we can share across the components. So, and actually, let's also, I'm going to want to export this because we're going to use this in our other files. But now I'm going to come and create a React component. So I'm going to call this component a data provider because this is going to provide data to my app. Okay. And I'm also going to want to have state. This is going to be a very important part because we're going to grab our use state hook because what is really going to happen is all of our state is going to live in here. So we're going to have some user state because we're kind of redoing our app from yesterday. And let's just set that empty to default to an empty array. Let's also, I'm just going to create some just for demo. Set demo state. Equals use state. I'm just going to have this be a string like, hi, I am from the, data provider. So it's a simple hard-coded message saying, hi, I'm demo state from the data provider. And then I'm going to return. So here's just my React component. But I'm going to use this data context. So just kind of follow along, data context dot provider. So this React context returns this data, this returns what's called this, I'm calling it data context. And on that, there's a provider on there. And I can give this a value prop. So I'm going to do this as an object that has my users. And it has this demo state. And I'm doing some ES6 stuff. Maybe I won't do that. Let's just do this as a hard-coded object. Or I could just do like const, data. If this makes more sense to throw this in like a whole thing in a variable, data provider state. Set this equal to this object. Maybe this will clean it up. I'm just throwing it into a variable. Don't have to do this, but there we go. Just throwing another key, X is 1, just for demo. So we have some demo state, we have users, we have an X, which is just 1. This is just a JavaScript object. And I use this data context provider. It has a value prop where I give it, what is going to be this state. And then what I want to do is I just want to do this props.children because this is going to wrap my whole application, this component. And so I use, not payments, props. And then I need to define props up here. Export default data provider. So this is creating an object that will be, global. Then here we, return the provider, which will wrap my app. All my app. Okay. So how do I use this? Where do I use this? Well, I just use this provider in one spot, and that's in my index.js. I'm going to wrap my whole app in this data provider. Make sure you don't forget that comma. So I now just take that browser router and everything inside of here, and I wrap it all in this data provider. So I need to import that. So to review, and I can do this in like my README. I do like a, context basics. So first we want to create a provider. That's what we did here. Throw that inside of here. And then second, we wrap our app in provider, in created provider. And that's what I did here in my index.js.
So what exactly is the functionality of this? Like, what does this do to the app?
We're gonna see. We kind of need to do. We're kind of getting it set up, and it'll just be easier to show it.
Are you keeping it a
Okay.
surprise?
I mean, I can try to. I mean, it's going to. We're going to be able to like. We have this shared data.
The suspense is killing me.
It's
So now it just like kind of looks like random code. I'm just trying to, but I
mean,
get it.
kind of. So what I'm saying is we're going to have global state. So my users, this demo state, this X, it's now, since I'm wrapping my whole app in this data provider, what we're trying to do is we're going to now provide this user state, this demo state, whatever X is, whatever we want, we're going to provide it to our whole app. That's why we're wrapping our whole app within this data provider.
Okay, that makes sense.
And for this, I'm just going to do like a ... code, app here or whatever. But the point is, in our React DOM rendered, like this data provider is going to be our top level thing. So now if I, preview this. So we've only done, it's just 2 steps. We create a provider. Here's some code. Oh, I should do that as JavaScript. See if I do JavaScript, it's going to be a little more readable instead of just a terminal. Okay, so yeah, now we're getting to like the part, and I want to make sure I haven't broken anything yet. It's always good to check. Now we're getting to the part where we actually use it. So let's go ahead and use it. So let's say I want to, and let's just for demo's sakes, let's go put in like a hard-coded user. Like, so I have an array, let's just do ID 1, just so there's something in here. And whatever, that's good for now. Just a name, ID and a name, sweet. There's some data in there, and we also have this demo state, and we have this X. Cool. So now we would want to use this. So now I could go to my pages. Like I want to grab like user data, right? Makes sense that my users component would want that user state that's in my data provider. So let's grab it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import my data context. So notice that was something we exported right here. So I'm importing this data context. And that's why it's in the curly brackets. It's because I'm not exporting default, the data context. In my data provider, I export default the data provider, which is this component right here. But I want to grab this thing because what I can also do, and this is very, very nice. It's so clean. I can grab what's called a use context hook. So we've seen the use state hook, but now we have another hook that's called use context. And now I can say const, let's just call it X, let's call it foo for now, just to see what it is. I grab my use context hook and I pass it a specific context, which is in this case, my data context. Spell that right, data, I'm not talking, okay, context. And let's just this right here, let's do a JSON.stringify. Bam, what is that I see? What is foo?
It's your user.
It's my user, there's my users array. There's my demo state.
Or it's your whole function there.
It's that whole value. It's this whole data providers thing.
Yeah.
It's just, I'll just call this thing. It's really nuts. So in my, if I want to grab users, you know, I could destructure, I could just say users. I mean, this is because foo is just like this data, this is just returning that object. So I could destructure users off of that. Or I could, you know, call this, you know, data. How do I grab, how would I just grab the users? Right here. If this is the code.
Just data.
Data, is that going to be just the users?
Data dot users.
Dot users, yeah.
Dot users. So there's my users. Boom. You know, so then I could grab X, and then I could grab whatever demo state.
What's your shortcut for copying lines?
I do Command C, Command V. There's also, is it Command D? There's another one that does it.
This looks like you do it out like with just one quick thing, but you're fast.
Fast. Command V does it. I swear it's copying. Oh wait, no, there's another one. What is it? I've like tried to stop using so many. I've kind of gotten bad with my hotkeys. But yeah, I just do a Command C, Command V. But I don't need to like, if it's only one line, I don't need to highlight it. It will just like copy that whole line and paste it. Cool. So I don't know if you appreciate this, but this is like, oh my God, that's so easy to grab that global state and just use it.
So you can grab that because you already have that in the other file that you're referencing, right?
I can do that because I set this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I set up this data like
In the data provider, yeah.
you know, the create context, you know, this is create context here. This is doing a lot. This is doing a lot for us. You know, it creates this like context that we can use. And it creates like a provider. So it really creates a way to, you know, provide, you know, it gets us a way to like get and set our data.
So is that pretty similar to props then? Or is that just props?
No, I would say no. There's more going on behind the scenes with this.
Okay.
And, you know, before hooks, there's a less clean way if you can't use hook, if you're not using hooks to do this. I'm not even going to talk about it right now. So if we don't use hooks, we can't do it this nice way that we're doing right here. Use context, because this use context thing is relatively new to React, because hooks are relatively new, because they're like, I don't know, 3 years old or something. So but yeah, this cleans up our code. So then let's also say, okay, let's do this. Let's say I want to change state. I want to change like this demo state. And just remember, if the key and value are the same in an object, I don't have to put it there. I don't have to like do that. I can do a shorthand. If they're not the same, like this x is 1, I do have to have the, obviously I would have to have the key and then the value. But why don't we just pass set demo state, which is my setter to change this state. Let's add this to my data provider thing. Okay, so now in my users.js, let's, you know, add a button on click equals, you know, I'd have to call it data dot set demo state, right? Let's pass it a variable change or a string to actually change it. I don't want that to run on mount, so I'll do it as an arrow function. Change text. And let's just throw this down here. I don't need to stringify that either, since it's already a string. Just have that there so we can see data. Okay. This is more just for demo. So I have this on click where I set my demo state to changed. So change text. Boom, that's changed. All right. Now this is like the really cool part. So let's say in the about page, I want to grab that, you know, that state. So let's just do a little review. So how do I do that? Well, I import the use, well, I need to use context hook from React. And then I also need to import my context from that provider file. So that's the data context. Const. And I'm going to just show you a different way. Since this is going to return an object, I can just destructure it right here. Demo state equals use context data context. Why is that not popping up? Demo state, let's just okay, so now I'm just reading it here. And let's actually grab the set demo state too, so we can see it set demo state. Let's add another button here. click equals set demo state changed in out. So now in my about page, I'm pulling this demo state. I'm pulling the function to change the demo state with the use context hook and the data context from my provider. I'm just setting up another click handler to change the demo state text to change in about, or I could say changed in about, and then just render it. Okay. And then just so we could see this in my users, I'll just say changed in users. And I don't like that little, I'm just gonna HR here. Okay, so there's my state. I can change text. Notice how it changes it there in that whole like provider. It says changed in users. I go to about. Look at that. That demo state is changed in users. I didn't have to pass any props like that. That state is shared globally. So now when I grab it in my about page, it's going to be the same that it is my users. So I could change it here. So now the demo state is changed in about. I go to my users, it's changed in about. So if I refresh, it's hi, I'm demo state from the data provider. So, about can have that, the users has it. I can change it in my about, which is also going to, that's going to be changed in my users because that state is now global. You're lucky. Like, does this seem just so much more simpler? It really should.
That seems a lot more simple than what we were doing yesterday.
Yeah. And it's not to say you don't need to know how to do what you did yesterday. Like you need to know how to pass props down. You need to know how to pass props down through multiple components. This is not a workaround for that. It's definitely not. Because you still need to know that because there's still going to be cases where you do that. This is not going to solve that completely. But this does do a nice thing for us where it does all that for us. Or sorry, I said it. If we want to share state globally, it gives us a way to do it. So I think another nice thing it does is it's actually kind of going to clean up your components a little. Because we can now do all our CRUD logic for our users in this provider. We're not going to do it in our users component. We're going to do it in here.
Can you think of like a real world application on a website where this is like being used right now? Could you like show us a real example?
Where the context is?
Yeah, just like with what we're doing right now, with what we're building, like could we see it on a live site somewhere?
I don't know specifically who's using this. I would say this, because if your app's getting complicated, you have two choices. You have Redux or you have this. And so I don't know who's using what. All the places I've worked at have done Redux.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that just because this is a little newer and Redux has been around longer. Redux is there's a little more like boilerplate code.
Right.
So I can't say off the top of my head, but I would say, yeah, it's either or. Okay. And I will say this, it's the same idea. It's the same, because Redux is, you can actually create multiple providers. We're just having one. So I could have, multiple providers inside of here. Like I could have a data provider. I mean, I probably should have called this like users provider. I just didn't want to get that specific, but I could have multiple providers, like whatever style provider.
Gotcha.
With a Redux, you only have one provider. Is the way to think of it. You have one state op. You have this one global thing.
Gotcha.
But it's the same thing because these providers are still going to be wrapping your whole app, and you're going to have this concept of shared state.
Okay.
So, yes. So the answer to your question is like any app that uses React has some level of complexity. The apps I built, like, you know, I even did like a pretty simple one for teleperformance. It was like a React Native app. I mean, it wasn't super, it was, you know, there's a lot to it, but it was a little more on the simple side. And I was like, dude, if I didn't have Redux, or I could have also used, you know, this context thing, it would have been, I don't know how I would have done it. Because it would have got so hard to manage the state. But now this is just making it easier to manage the state, is the takeaway here.
Gotcha.
And actually, like, Redux takes a long time to learn, but with what the functional programming we were doing this week and learning this data provider, Redux is actually going to, and there's actually like a hook that we'll use later too. That's very Reduxy. So by the time we talk about all of that, Redux is not going to be that hard to learn.
Okay. I'm just going to want to read up on this stuff, I think.
Cool. Yeah, I would say the key takeaway here, like the high level like thing here that's really nice, is this global state. That's and then we can provide that and we can just pull it from wherever we want in our components. It's very nice. So let's do our CRUD actions. Let's just do them all right now, or some of them. I'm just going to do this in my provider. And let's do this on users. So let's do our add. So const add user. This should take a user. So what should my add, what does the add usually look like? So I have my users, set users, it's taking a user. What do I want to do here? This is where this should be getting a little repetitive. And this is more, because this is also then more like the JavaScript part. Like you almost, I mean, we do have the hook, but how do we add something to our state? We clone it, right? Let new users.
Is that the spread operator?
Yeah, that's the spread one. So let new users equal, let's take our user state. And then whatever user was passed to me. So that's my new users. And then we can set users, new users. Cool. And let's just throw that add user function on here. So now this data provider thing has this add user on it. Awesome. Let's do our update. Const update user. That also takes in a user. Well, for this, you know, we can do our let updated users equal, grab our users or map over them, go through each user. Does the user that I'm looking at, does that ID equal the user.id? If it does, that's the thing that was passed to this function, and that's the thing I want to return. Like I want to return that into the new array. If not, I don't want to change it. I just want to leave it the same, and that's the U thing. there's my update function in as a one-liner ternary. And I actually think this is readable. Can you kind of like say that in your head? We're going to go through, so I'm going through my users. And look how it knows that you is this object that has ID and name. So does the u.id, does that equal the ID that was passed to this function? I could say this like maybe to be a little more clear. This is going to be the updated user. I make that a little more clear what that is. This would be the new user from form. That's kind of where I'm expecting to get this. So let's go through each of our users. Does the u.id, does that equal the ID from the form, you know, from our React component? If it does, let's use that one. If not, just return the user. And then I can set users to be my updated users. Cool. Well, there's my logic to do my updated users. Okay, let's do our delete user. Give me an ID. That's all I want. That's all I really need to delete a user. So I could just do like const or like whatever, let filtered users equal users dot filter. Go through each of my users. And as long as the ID of the user I'm looking at does not match the ID this is the ID of user clicked, if I want to be a little more specific. And I could also just call that user if this is also more readable. So as long as the user.id does not equal the ID of user clicked, we don't want to delete it. I could set users to my filtered users. Oh, and then I need to actually do this delete users. Right, there's our add, our update, our delete. And then I can just pass those functions to my data provider thing, add user, update user, delete user. So let's just go hard code this for now. So what I can do, let's do a on click data.add user. You know, eventually we're going to want to add this to a form, but let's just test it. Add user, let's give it an ID, math.random, name, whatever, yo. Add user. This one for update, I'm going to just hard code one. I know we have ID user one, so update user. Update user. This will be specifically user one. And then we can do delete user. For this one, we just pass it the ID. So I'm hard coding it now, but I'm just testing to see if it's working. So let's add user. Cool. There's my user that I just added to my state. Let's update user one. Okay, that's been changed. I mean, this really should say delete. Let's delete user one. That's deleted. So I've, you know, I really haven't done much with the UI, and we'll get to that next, but I have shown that like, hey, I can now add a thing to my user, I can delete a thing from my user, and I can update a user. Let's do one more new thing and then we'll take a break. So let's do this. Let's do a get users, right? This is where we want to do our Axios call. And you know, we were using the .then .catch syntax, and there's a new feature called Async Await that we're going to start using. Is cleaner. .then .catch. So what I mean by that, let's look at these two examples. I'm going to do this in two different functions. We're going to say get users one. I'm going to say call this get users. So the way we did it yesterday, or we did a Axios. So I'm going to import Axios. .get. I forgot the URL. Rec res in. I'm going to do the delayed. Copy it. Okay. Oh, it's delayed. So we do the res, and remember we did like the set users, and for this we had to do like the res dot data. And then yeah, if we wanted like an error object, okay, cool. We want some error state. Let's do error state. You can just watch this because I'm going to comment this out and then I'll show you the other way. I just want this so we can compare and contrast. Set error, you know, error. So we have our Axios call where we can set our users. So then I could pass this on down. Get users old. I know I'm going pretty fast. Just kind of want to get this going. So just kind of watch and then we'll take a break and then I'll have some times for questions. So I'm going to do a data.get users old. And then, you know, get users. Those are not defined in my data provider. I need to do a const in front of these const. So all I'm doing right now is I'm doing this get users old. This is going to do my Axios.get. So that's going to take, I don't want that to take 3 seconds. Let's have that take 1 second. This is going to grab our data. Once it gets it, it's going to set our users. So we should see this update when I click this button. We should see it update our user state after 1 second. So I click get users, 1 second, boom, there's our users. And to show our error, let's just do like the data.error and do an ampersand and like, let's render it data.error. So if we have an error, like I go in here and I change the URL, I get users. I'm getting my 404. It doesn't look like it's setting the error. Oh, I'm not passing it. So if I look at this, I'm trying to use that error, but I don't ever pass that down here. So I can just keep adding things to this data provider thing. So now I have the error. I get users. Where is that? I'm still looking for that error occurred. Data.error and
On your get user old function, shouldn't it be .catch for the error, not .then?
oh, did I do a .catch?
You did a .then, not a .catch.
Oh yeah, totally. That would be it. Thank you. So yeah, I need to do a .catch because that's going to catch. If there's an error, this is when that gets triggered, if there's a .catch. So get users. There we go. Sweet. There's my error occurred. Perfect. You know, what if we had to do an Axios call after this Axios call was finished? Well, then it might start to look something like this. And then if we needed to do one in there, it looks something like this. I mean, that gets a little ugly looking, right? And sometimes you need to do this. Sometimes it's like you need to wait for an async call to finish before you run another async one. So it can get what's called this callback hell, where you get this really nasty looking code where, and it can be hard. This doesn't look too readable, right? Because of just how nested it is. And it's just like, it's a little ugly. I actually think this is this is god awful in a couple ways, but it's not awful, but I'm going to show you a much cleaner way that we're going to start using. And this is, I think ES8 feature, but it's called Async Await. So what I can do is I can use this async keyword. So I can say, hey, this function is going to be asynchronous. And if it is, I can use the await keyword. So I can say let response equals await. Because this axios.get is a promise. So I can await for the promise. So my code, or this function, it's not my code, it's like this function will pause here and wait. It doesn't block the others, it doesn't block the other parts of my code. It just blocks right here in this function call. And then I can do set users res.data. And I'm just going to comment this out just so we can have that as a comparison, because I want to use this function instead. I'm going to pass this to, I'm just going to call it get users. And just to show you, it does the same thing. Get users, we wait a second. Oh, I need to change the URL. We'll do the error handling in just 1 second. Get users. There we go. It's working the same way. See, but what we do is we can write this code so that it looks like it's like going in a synchronous order. Because what we do is we pause. It's kind of like saying, hey, pause right here. And then once this finishes, then we can set users. Is that cleaner than this? The axios.get.then res arrow function set users. Which one looks better? So I 100% think this one.
Yeah,
And-
it looks better.
And then if we have multiple things like I need to do another call after this one works, I can just write it right after, because it's going to wait for this one to finish. Then we would do this, and then we run this one, and then it would wait for that one to finish. Then it would do this one. So if we have multiple ones, we don't have to like nest them inside of each other.
So it goes in the order that you write them.
Yeah. And this, the await keyword is going to await for the, because the get returns a promise. So it's going to await for that promise to finish.
Yeah.
So it pauses this function. It doesn't block your other code. Your other code's going to work. It's just going to block this function right there. So how do we do error handling? Well, this is actually just a JavaScript thing. There's something called a try catch block, and you can do this anywhere. You can do this with any JavaScript code. You can try to do something, and if any error occurs within this try block, so in between these curly brackets, if it fails, it will hit the catch, and then you can handle that there. So I could do the set error occurred. So that's how I do error handling, is with the try catch block. So if this is misspelled and we do want to handle an error, get users, error occurred. But the try catch, works. I could have like a x+1. Oh, that's not going to work. How do I cause an error without it failing? It should be easy, right, to create an error. There we go, x.push1. So I have this x variable. It's not really defined. Well, sorry. Let me ask you this question. Is x defined? The answer is yes.
Does it just define itself?
Yeah, it's kind of let's just come in here, do it like let x. Well, this let me do it in the term. It's undefined, right? So x. Undefined is actually a value. It's actually a type in JavaScript. So it's kind of a little confusing because the value is undefined, but that is an actual value. So if I run this, I get an error occurred. So I click get users, error occurred. Notice that my app didn't break because it's in a try catch. Let's just try that, not in a try catch. I'll refresh. Now I have this error. Cannot read properties, undefined reading push. So here I get an error. But if it's in a try catch, I don't get the error because I'm saying, hey, I want to handle that error. So I catch the error and then I handle it. So the try catch block can allow us to do stuff, and then we catch the error and then we can like handle it gracefully instead of just having JavaScript crash. So what we do here, so the try catch is not just with like async and Axios calls, it's just with anything. We can try to do anything. If an error occurs, we can then handle it. And how we might handle an error is, and we can kind of see this, I might want to handle an error and be like, on my UI, say like an error occurred. So there's that.
How is a try catch different from an if else?
An if else works on a condition. So if, X is greater than 1, or like, 2 is greater than 1.
Oh yeah, you have to, okay, yeah, I see that.
So try catch is like, hey, try to do all of the stuff in this block. If it's successful, cool. We don't need to do anything else. But if anything causes an error, so if it causes an error, then catch that error, and then you can handle it. But just kind of want to show you that whole syntax of this. So now we can get our users. So we get our users from our API. We can add them, we can update them, we can delete them. So we kind of have all that functionality done. Now, the next thing we need to do, and we'll take a break and do that, is just go ahead and, add that. I mean, the hard part's pretty much close to being done. Now we just need to go like add some buttons and some better UI and actually hook up, because right now we're also hard coding these values. So yeah, when we get back, let's go ahead and do that. And then we're also going to combine this with React Router to make this even a little more simpler. So let's take a little break though. I know this is a lot, but, expect this to take some time to get around, but you at least see that this is learning these new tools is going to make this easier in the long run. Like like in particular, React Router and the context API. No, is it pretty confusing?
It's just a lot of new stuff. So
Yeah.
I think it makes as much sense as it did yesterday, but it's coming together.
Yeah, and yeah, I know this is a lot for today, but I'm kind of doing it today just so you can have the weekend to marinate on it.
yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just trying to absorb it all.
For sure. Well, cool. Let's take a break. Let's come back at 12:20. I do want to get through the full CRUD, so I might have to go a little quick. But then you'll have 3 days to look at this, and we'll definitely this is kind of going to be like we're getting more closer to what our actual setup's going to be once we start working with Rails.
Cool. Sounds good.
Could you please push that to GitHub?
Oh yeah, for sure. Thank you for
Back when did you say?
let's do 12:10.
Okay. You mean 12:20?
Yeah, 12:20. That's the one. Thank you. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. So if we were talking about like maybe when you're redoing this homework or when you're going through this homework, because I'm going to have you do something similar. I'm not going to have you do the users things again. I'm going to give you a different thing to work with. But yeah, if you're kind of talking about steps, I think we could follow these, and these are not going to be exact, but this gives you a rough outline of maybe some potential steps. So for your homework, so one would be, you know, set up your project on GitHub. Then you'd want to add Axios and React Router. Then you could do your basic React Router setup. There might be some more steps we're going to go through after, but just get the basics set up so you have it working. And then you could, after that, you know, set up your provider. You know, you set up your provider, you wrap that around your app. And then guess what we didn't have here is, you know, use it. And how we could kind of just like a brief how you do that is, you know, with the use context hook. So I can maybe show like the about page to kind of show a demo of that. For example. So there's, you know, we want to grab the context. We want to grab the use context hook, you know, along with the context from our provider. That's like just a brief overview of how we use that. Okay, and now we're talking, and then we did like, that's kind of just the basics of context. And now, you know, if we're doing like CRUD, I would say, you know, one step you could do is, you know, create the state in your provider. And two, you know, set the, or, you know, here we can, or like do the CRUD functions in your provider. You know, this isn't like complete. This is incomplete, but it gets us a lot of the way there. Right? Like if I look at my data provider, I have this get users functions that gets my user. Now it's still not really rendering them, but it gets them. I have this function that adds a user to my state. I have a function that updates it. Now I don't have the form set up, but this functionality set up, and same thing with the delete. So I think what we want to do next is, you know, kind of the UI stuff. You know, this would be like the forms. You know, the click events, kind of stuff like that. Rendering things to look nice. think that's kind of where we're at now. So let's start with the form. So let's do I think once again, I just want to maybe keep this simple. Let's just do a new, we'll see if we might not get to update today. So let's do with create. So what I want to do with create, let's just do a new file. Let's call this new user. Now with React Router, we're having some choices. I could do this on my users page, or I could have this be on a different page. So I'm actually going to, let's just do this as its own page and we'll throw in a link. So let's do const user. For now, let's just do something simple. New user actually. So this is my new user. Export const new user. So if I want to add a new page with React Router, what I want to do is I'm going to want to maybe add a link to it. So in my app.js, give me a way to get there. So this would be like new, I'll just do underscore users. And then I could also add this in my, I need to add this in my index. That can be my new user component. Why is that coming in brackets? That should not, I need to do export default new user. And then I don't want, so if that's a default export, I don't want the curly brackets. And then, yeah, I'm going to add, sorry, just this is more of a UI thing, just a space and a dash and a space just to create a little distance. Cool. So now I can go to users, I can go to the about page, and I can go to the new users page. Now I might not, just to kind of show you, I might not want that link here. It's kind of up to you. I could, in my users page, I could have a link here to new user. Maybe it doesn't make sense to have the new user link in my nav bar. I just want that in my new users page. Could throw that there. I would just need to make sure I import link from React Router DOM. And then HR, create some space. I'm actually just going to throw this at the bottom. I think this can be nice just to stringify this data just to see what it is, to see it change, just as like a debugging tool. But so now I can go to create new users from this page. Ooh. I actually need to put a backslash there. Or it will actually just append the new user there. Cool. So it's kind of up to you where do you think it makes sense to have this link. I'll just keep them both in there for demo purposes. But that takes me to my new user page. Because maybe in my new users page, I could also add like a link to go to the users. So I can start creating these like links to go back and forth. Users page. Oh. So sweet, now I can do this form. And let's just build, this will be a little bit of a review because we did this yesterday, but let's just build it out again. So let's do a form. We had and I'm going to do the names nice on this one. I'm not going to do any confusing names. Or not, yeah, I'm just going to keep the names good. So let's do this. I'm just going to create my state. I need to import use state from React. And I can do let name set name equals use state. So I'm going to want one. Wait, we had a first name, right? First underscore name and set. I'm just going to do these camel case or snake case, but let's go. I'm going to create a couple of these. So we have last name. Actually, I'm going to have my setters be mix matching, but set last name. And then we had email, set email, and avatar, right? Okay, then we can do our inputs. So the value for this one will be, last underscore name, and the on change will be set last name to be e.target dot value. And then I need to wrap that in a function that takes that a bit. And I'm going quick. I'll slack this out once I'm done. I just want to get this form set up. So we're going to have, I should probably have this be first name first. First name, set first name, kind of a lot of repetition here. Let's see here. Then we have email. Email. Set email. Avatar. We have avatar and set avatar. And my form can take I want this to have a button. Add, and then we'll do our on submit. Do handle submit. Just define this really quick, and then this is where I'll slack it out once I test it. Because I just want to get to the point where we're logging the object, and then we'll take a little more time to decide what to do with it. Because this is just kind of like some generic setup. So we want to prevent default, and then we want to create an object. Let new user equal first name, last name, email, avatar. And we'll console.log this. Okay. So yes, SDF, whatever. First name SDF. Okay, so it's working. So let me select this out. I know I went really quick through that. This is, you did this, we did this yesterday. You did this for homework. So I kind of wanted to go quick through this part because this was just building out a form. So now let's look at what happens here and just kind of review like what we're doing, like the difference between today and yesterday. So, I have this users page that has all of my users right here. So I can get them. 404, did I not fix my URL? So I can get my users. There they are. And now I come here, I navigate to a different page where I can go in and add some information. So I have this new user object. One other thing I forgot to do that I'm going to want to do is right here, generate a random ID, just because we're not actually working with the database. So for a new user, I do want to generate a random ID. But, I have values from form. What do I do? I also say this, I have the values from the form, but I also have add user function working. Right? We had tested that in our users component. I can add a user. It's like hard coded right now, but I can add it. So how did I do it here? I grabbed that use context hook. I grabbed my data context. I created this data variable. And then I can just call data.addUser where I pass it a user. So in my new user form, I just need to do that. I need to import the use context hook. And this is where this context stuff is really awesome. I just need to, I need that function to add the user, which is done. I just need to get it. So how I get it is I grab my use context, I grab my data provider. I can create this like data thing, and then I can say this equals the used context, pass it my data context, and boom. Now data has that add user function on it. I can just pass it the new user. Okay, so now I can go to my new user. Let's just do C, D, E. I click add. Okay. Let's go back to my users. Is it there? There's that user. It's been added. What do you think would maybe be nice to do after I click add?
Maybe go back to your users page.
Yeah, go back to my users page. How do I do that?
It would be an on click, right?
Well, this is my on click, this handle submit, like right here. It's like right here, I want to go back to users page.
Can you just link to that page?
So what we've been using a link, that's going to create a link. That creates like an actual link, but that's close. That's a good idea. I mean, have I told you how to do this yet? No, I haven't. So if you're on this, like in your head, you're saying, oh man, I'm new to React Router. I kind of know the basics, or like I know some stuff about React Router, but man, what I want to do right here is I want to go back to a page, like in a function. So what would I do? Starts with a G. Google. This is where, you know, there's definitely going to be times it's, you know, especially when working with third-party libraries, you're going to not be an expert on the third-party library. You're going to get to a spot where it's like, oh man, you know what would be nice here is if when they click the add button, you know, it navigates back to some page. Man, you know, React Router is a really popular library, man. Like, you know, Netflix uses it. They've got to have a way to do that, right? So that's kind of what I would say in my own head. So then I would be like, okay, navigate in function or something, React Router. And then I also might want to do like version 6. And then, you know, can kind of maybe look at, you know, the docs. If I could find the docs might be a little vague. If you're looking for something very specific, you could watch a tutorial. I'm really just looking for like a Stack Overflow. Something that's quick. But you could go through the tutorials. There should just come on. Where is just, there it is. There's one. Root.
I found something that is a link, but it's styled like a button. Would that work?
Yeah, I don't want like a button, right? This is just going to happen automatically, right? I know the thing I'm just trying to find like a better, easier. So, where did I just saw it. Navigate. Oh, I said it. I didn't in function. I didn't have the function in there. Navigate. There we go. So yeah, you might come through, read this. And then once you get to like, I know what I'm looking for. Like a keyword. Because I'm looking for like another like hook. So the thing, because, and then once you get more familiar, you can like hook. Maybe I could search this. Maybe this would give me a better hook to navigate. Okay, there it is. So there are two ways to navigate. This is an older one. This is navigate and navigate. You can access. So I'm looking for this use navigate hook. That's the one. But you can spend, it's definitely using third-party libraries. This is part of kind of the process. You're going to be spending time just on Google, reading the docs. You're not, you know, you can't just expect yourself to be an expert on it. Even if you've been, you know, you've been using it for a couple months, you need to get familiar with just reading documentation in general. So, and Googling stuff. So if I was looking at the use, like, here's the one I want to use navigation. So that's a way I could almost find it. It's like, which one of these things do I think maybe would do it? It's the use navigate. So the use navigate hook returns a function that lets you navigate programmatically. So I can look at this little syntax. Let navigate equals use navigate. It's a hook. And then in some function, I can just do navigate. And it seems like I can pass a URL. Now, as you're starting, like I knew it was like the use navigate hook. But if you're starting out, you might have to spend like some time, and it might be like how you Google it, like navigate in a function in React Router DOM. You know, you might have to spend a little more time like sifting through. If you're completely new, you know, you might sift through like an article. And, you know, you may or may not find the thing you're looking for. Let's see if they actually do have in here, like have a use navigate. And yeah, see, eventually it like going through this, if I was like following this, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I know what this is. I know what this is. Oh, wait, what's this? Okay, this is what I want to do. Sweet. So it's like use navigate. And then it looks like I can call that navigate function. All right, so let's try that. So that's the kind of like, you know, when you get to a question like that, it's Google, it's going in. Maybe you take 10, 15 minutes to read an article to figure it out. The good thing is, as you're like reading through this, you might learn some other things about React Router. You might get some other, you know, tricks. Like, oh, you see like this use params. We're actually going to use that in 1 second, but let's do this. So I grab my const navigate equals use navigate. So I need to import that. From React Router DOM. And then here, yeah, if I want to go back, it looks like I can just call the navigate function and then give it the path users. If you ever like have a specific question, how do I do something? Like, how do I go back in React Router? If you can get that specific, the answer to your question is Google. Google that question. There's like a funny website where like you could like, someone would ask you a question, like if they texted you a question, you could like just send them back. The answer would be their, like,
It was called, let me Google that for you.
yeah. Is that the website? Is it
lmgtfy.com? Yeah.
Okay. That one's awesome. Because then you just, it's kind of like, yeah, here you go. And it just Googles it for them. So yeah, I'm going to navigate back to users. So let's, and then yeah, we obviously got to test it, see if it works. Boom. There we go. There's our users.
Okay, so you're still using that link. You had to import that navigate.
It's not the link. It's the use navigate.
It's the, yeah.
Yeah. So I use this use navigate hook. I use it to create this variable I called navigate. And then I can call navigate's a function and I can pass it the path. So this path I give it needs to match.
Yeah. That's what I meant, path. Yeah.
It needs to match one of these paths in my index. So it needs to match, you know, one of those. I think if we have like a route that doesn't have a path, like, and this needs to go at the bottom. Could say something like this, path not found. This is just a React component, right? This is a function that returns JSX. Let's see if this works. So if I, in my users.js, if I, or where did I do that? My new user, if I give this a bad path. So create a new user. Add, oh, does that blow up? I guess it doesn't like that. What? No routes match location. Okay, that's how you do it in version 5. So once again, how do I do a not found in React router? Actually, no, this is in the tutorial. That's old. This is the part, like the version React router going from version 5 to version 6. There is some pretty significant changes. That's just part of the software world. Sometimes when they update, they do make some bigger changes, but maybe I do need to make that into a component. I know they have this in their tutorial. Invoices. Maybe. I can go to their complete version. I feel like I did see that. Oh, it looks like they give it a star. Okay. So in the last one, in version 5, you didn't give it anything and it would just catch it. But it looks like this one, if I give this path a star, like it just will match anything. Will that render it? New user. Clear that. That component here, it's not rendering it. I don't know, maybe I'm going to skip this if this doesn't work and then I'll figure it out. I actually want it as a component. Okay, I guess I did have to actually create that as a variable. So I could call that like not found. So if I give it a bad URL that doesn't match anything, it's just not going to find anything. But I could have like a not path not found. So yeah, the point there was though, I need, when I navigate this what I'm navigating to or what I'm putting my links into, they need to match the path I'm giving them in my route. Cool. So there's my users. Can add a user. Well, I can actually add a user with a form. Let's go quickly. What time is it? Oh, we're getting close on time. Let's go to my users and just render these out really quick so they look a little better. So I'm going to get rid of these buttons too. In this error, just kind of keep this clean. So I'm going to do a users.map. I'm just going to do this all right here. Equals user dot or u.id. I'm just going to do for now u.email. Let's just render the emails. Let's do the first and last name. That break it doesn't like that. Users.map is not a function. So let's do users because I had an uppercase. Okay, users is not defined. Remember, how do I get my users? I get them from my context. I called this data. So I actually need to grab data.
Data.users.
Yeah, data.users. And then I can map over those. I deleted my get users button. Get users. On click. Remember, this one's on the data as well. Data.get users. All right, get my users. There we go. So I wanted to show you one other thing with, let's first do a delete really quick, because this is going to be, since we have it done, this should be pretty quick. Delete on click equals, pass it a function. Remember, we have the delete already done. Forget what I called it. I think it's just delete user. Yeah, it's delete user. And then I need to pass it the ID of the user clicked. So data.delete user. Pass it the ID so that I'm going to get that from u.id. Now our delete's working. And notice how this user component, all of that CRUD action logic, it's not in here anymore. So this component's, what I would say, it looks a little more clean because that CRUD action stuff is here where my state is. That's because that's where my state's living. That's where I want this to be. And then I can just do that here. Like I can just pull that delete user, give it the ID. Don't need to pass any props or anything. I can just grab it from my context. Let's do a link. Let's say I want to link to a page, to a show page with the user. Because we have this user page. So let's link to that. So I want to link to, for each of my people, I want to link, and here's, let me show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to call this path users, but I need to know which user I want to link to. So to do that, I'm going to use the ID. That's going to take me to this show page of just that one individual user. So I'll have that link. I can now click show. Now the path not found, we haven't defined it in our index.js, but notice the URL, it's users for. It's putting the user's ID there. That's users 5. And just to so we can see this, let's also put the ID right here, u.id, so we can visualize it. So Tracy has an ID of 6. If I go to the show page, it's users/6. So how do I now notice the 6? That's changing. This 6 can change. It can be anything. So when I set up the path, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a users, and I'm going to give it this colon ID, because this is a very, like, this can be anything, right? We're saying it can be 4, it can be 5. This is kind of like I'm giving it a name too. I'm going to call this ID because that's what it is. And then I want this to go to the user page. So I import my user component. So we cannot resolve user for some reason that grabbed it from the wrong place. I need to do pages/user. So I go to user. So I can get my users. I click show. That now takes me to my user page. User 2. Cool. So a couple different ways we could do this. Link to users. I wonder if I can just like pass the user. But let's do this. So actually, let's just first grab the ID. So what I'm going to do here is in my user, and I'm just going to show this to you. I would normally have us like Google this, but we're going to use this. I'm going to say let params equal use params. So once again, this is a hook from React Router. And then let's just JSON dot stringify params, just to see what that is. ID 2. That is my params in my URL. See, it's ID 2. There's another hook you can also see quite a bit. You'll use location. Let location equal use location, and then we can JSON stringify that. Paragraphs, so they're in like new lines. So this can give us information about the path name, the users. It gives us other stuff. So let me do this in my users component. I think there's another way. Let's see. This is the the version 5 way. I can wrap this in a object and say path name. Go back, users, show. So what I did, I just wrapped this, instead of giving it a string, I'm giving it an object with a key path name. And then I want to see if this works, if I can give it state. Should just be my user. Users go back, show. See if I can do this. No, that's not going to work. Okay, so I need to Google this. Pass data and link React router version 6. So what I'm looking for is how the link. Link to, oh, I just give it state. Okay. So that, I guess I don't know. Okay. So it states a prop in this version. So I'm going to go change it back to the way it was. So the 2 is a string. How did I have that? Back to way that was. Okay. The 2's a string. So, and then I can give it a state prompt, it looks like. So users, let's go show. And so there is that user object. So for my show, and I'm going to keep this simple for now. So I could say something like this. I could say like H1 user is going to be the location, and I'm going to stringify this. Location.state. You can also say, you know, the ID is going to be JSON stringify. This one I don't need to stringify because it's not an object. I can just say params.id. So there's my user, there's that object, there's the ID. Should we, I kind of want to, it's a little late. I was wanting to get this update form working, but I say let's stop it here. Maybe I'll have you try, because what I showed you is in this user page, I'm able to get that user data or the user ID. So I'm getting all the information I need from that user. So that's kind of the how. So there's a couple things we're using: the use params hook and the use location hook. And in my users, when I pass it the link, I give it the 2, but then I give it the state. That's how I actually pass down the user. So I think a bonus for like, the bonus would be, do you think you could pre-populate, and you could create a new form for this, or you could try to reuse the new user form? You know, with this information, could you have like an edit user form that had all of this that was pre-populated? This kind of shows you how to get the data in React Router from page to page.
What do you mean by pre-populated?
So if I had a form, I mean, I shouldn't be like, this is the new user form. So if I go to my show page and there's this form, well, that shouldn't say new user, that should say edit page. And then those values of this user, because this is the user with ID 1, you know, there's the email, there's the first name. So the form should be populated with those values.
Okay, I see.
Because this would be like an update.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I know it says new, but. So that's what I'm saying with that. So, yeah. Lots of information, but you have lots of time to absorb it.
Yeah, this weekend's gonna be a lot of this.
But yeah, there's two new, these tools, the data provider and the React router, they're going to make life easier in the long run. So cool. I'm going to push this up to GitHub. take a break, take lunch, go outside, get away from the computer, take a nap. I've been taking like 20-hour power naps in the afternoon. They're amazing.
20 hours, huh?
Oh, sorry, 20. They're so good.
That's a long power nap.
Yeah, 20 minutes.
I think they call that depression.
Yeah, that is a severe like heroin addiction or something. Okay.
All right, back at like 2:15 then.
Yeah, let's call it 2:15.
All right, see y'all later.
Sweet. Have a good one, everyone.
Thanks, see ya.
Oh, my head's not even.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.